Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I am your host, Teri Wellbrock. Excited to have with me today Rob Rodriguez. So, welcome, Rob.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah, glad to have you here. So, I'm going to do the quick little reading of what it is you do, and then I'll let you extend on that. So, founder and director of the Family Hub, a nonprofit helping families heal from traumatic events, co author of Exploring Trauma, Building Resilience, a curriculum for men. And yeah, so talk to us about that.
Great. Well, thanks again. I started out as a licensed alcohol and drug counselor and working primarily with adolescents. And then I had a lot of contact with family members at that time. Um, and my contacts with them sort of led me to the initial thinking that maybe families and family members weren't as interested in the treatment process as we were. And I started to build a sort of resentment about that. And one thing I've learned about myself is if I'm resenting something, I better look into it. And the more research I did, the more I became aware that they just, well, families weren't aware of what was going on. And they had a lot of barriers, both, you know, social thinking barriers, emotional barriers, knowledge barriers, and a lot of them struggled with access as well. So as I became more and more educated about it, it led me to seek licensure as a marriage and family therapist. And with the idea to work with individuals who and families who struggled with addiction at that time, it's since expanded to other behavioral and mental and emotional issues. Um, but I strongly I became very passionate about reaching families who had no way of accessing care. The culture and the reality is that a lot of families are kept from participating in treatment because third party payers may not pay for it.
Right.
So that led to a kind of a cyclical way of thinking, and I wanted to relieve that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. I worked for a while in a mental health agency in the
Hmm.
Cincinnati area through the Head Start program and early Head
Mm.
Start, as well as mental health. The mental health side. I mean, that was the early education part. The mental health side. And yeah, how much I would see, especially in the school systems, with
Mm.
parents just not knowing
Hmm.
what to do and where to turn and
Hmm.
how to get help for their child. But also, like you said, almost like not being able to hear it. I think because they were caught in their own world of struggle. Um,
Hmm.
so they
Hmm.
know what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and the overabundance of psychobabble out there for everyone to consume, and diagnoses. There's a lot of, and I understand the need for diagnosis and how important it is, but for family members, it sometimes leads to a barrier in their own healing because
Yeah.
they're focusing so much on how to control this diagnosis and how to control their loved ones' behaviors that they're missing out on the larger systemic piece
Yes.
that needs to be addressed in order for everyone to heal.
Right. Now we've
Yeah.
connected through ACEs connection, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. I'm sure you know just what a powerful impact that has had
Hmm.
on, I mean, obviously your curriculum for men that you've written
Hmm.
um, focuses on resilience and that healing the trauma history part of it.
Right. So uh, we are. I also operate a for-profit called Family Recovery Resource Experts, that is for families fortunate enough to be able to pay for services out of pocket. And what we have developed in this section, in this organization, is a way of doing intensive family workshops. Um, I became irritated with what I call repeated first sessions, multiple first sessions. So the family and I get together. I try my best to present my best foot forward, and they do as well. And then I am strategic and structured, also solution focused and narrative. So I am thinking, of ways that I could have them complete assignments at home, and then it doesn't get done. We struggle. We come in. We talk about it the next week, and the cow or the crisis of the week is introduced, usually within 10 minutes left of the session, and we referee an argument and it repeated several times. Someone will get frustrated and therapy just doesn't work. We develop these workshops because we can get a family for a weekend, 16 hours or so of actual intensive work. Preceded by questionnaires and history taking and interviews, so that then it could be customized to their particular issue.
Wow, that
Uh,
is brilliant. Yeah.
and what they do, what they've expressed, most of our families that have done this is, this was like doing 6 months worth of
Yeah.
therapy in 2 days.
Yeah.
And, and to wit, a good 65% of my current clients are client referred. So I wanted to make that accessible to families who can't afford it.
Okay.
And so that's why I launched along with my partner Rachel Shutt. We started the Family Hub with that in mind. And what we've done then is go to schools and churches and present our model and our intent. And so we're getting a lot of grassroots movement from there. And we're hoping that the donors would follow suit
Yeah.
so that we could help as many families as we can.
And that was one of my questions. So how are you funding it? Is it through
But
grants? Is it through private donations?
we're hoping for both, but primarily private donations. And we just got incorporated,
Okay.
and we're just getting into but it was born literally of a desire to and a dream to help those families who can't afford services, because I believe that we are chasing a lot of epidemics,
Yeah.
and I believe that if we go to the origin, the source where families are struggling day to day, and help the young children there, we can eliminate a lot of epidemics.
Yeah.
We can eliminate a lot of the behavioral issues and the things that are driving our care today. We can be proactive rather than reactive.
Yes.
Yeah,
Agree. That
yeah,
cyclical, the cyclical trauma that is happening. So
right, right.
beautiful.
Yeah,
I love it. Well,
yeah.
again, I just think that's just brilliant because, like you said, you can take those 16 hours, and especially if you're, you know, doing a lot of the work beforehand with the questionnaires and so forth,
Mm-hmm,
just kind of dive right into it
mm-hmm,
in a
mm-hmm.
way. Yes.
Yeah, and when we do these, usually family members, of course, come pointing the finger at an individual who is the problem or is suffering, and um, we do this in such a way that no one feels. Well, that's what we strive for.
Yeah.
That no one feels, accused or ambushed or is the sole focus of the work.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
very cool.
yeah.
Wonderful. All right. So any myths or facts that you would like to clarify for listeners?
Um, well, to me, the biggest shift that I have seen is in my own growth is that recovery from any issue or healing from any issue is not linear. There isn't a starting point and a stopping point, and it's clearly delineated. It's the way that I like to describe it is if you look at a tree from a distance, it's nice, symmetric, it looks beautiful. Uh, you can make the assessment that it's a beautiful thing, but when you walk up closer to it, you can see the trunk has been buffeted and swirled and knotted, and the branches are all gnarled, and leaves are consumed or in various stages of decay, and but yet the image that it produces is a beautiful image, and so it is with individuals' recovery or healing process, especially from addictive disorders. I think that one of the myths that I would love to break is that um, that there is uh, a path to follow that will lead you to a certain result. I think individuals each produce their own journey,
Yeah,
and it's important for me to sometimes get out of the way of that and let them find their own way.
yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. I talk about that quite a bit because my
Mm-hmm.
own journey has just been a crazy, a crazy journey.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the idea of bringing in so many resources and then allowing people, kind of with like this podcast, offering
Mm-hmm.
so many different viewpoints and perspectives and coping skills and healing avenues that people can then connect to that thing that really is speaking to their soul. Or there's just that thing that's like, oh yeah, that might work. And,
Mm-hmm.
well, maybe it didn't work. But,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
wonderful. All right, well, thank you.
Sure.
So one of the questions that I love to ask, and I'm just going to throw it in. It's not in the order of how I put them out there, but it just popped into my head. So, if you could meet anyone, dead or alive, to help you with your journey, whether it's your personal journey, your professional journey, or both, who would it be?
Gosh, I gave that some thought, and I would have loved to spend a week with Young, um, just especially during that hiatus time when he was walking the beach and kind of deciding, you know, that must have been a nice turbulent time. And during those times, I think it's when we grow the most. Um, in my office, I want to have a collage. I've been taking photography now, and a collage of doors that I have taken pictures of, and I believe life is just a series of doors. And sometimes they look shut, and sometimes they're scary, and sometimes they're not very inviting, or they seem not to be. So, I would have loved to. I embrace his idea about this cosmic consciousness and how no idea is really our own or uh, really new. It exists, and only when we reach a certain level of awareness can we see it, and then we discover it.
Yeah,
Uh, and so it must have been really uh, uh, an interesting time for him during that time when he was trying to decide what to do with his and with his career, with his life, and so, you know, recently as I'm launching this, I'm 61 years old, and I was throwing around the idea to people. It's like, this is probably the most important work I'll ever do, and I'm launching it at this age, and it seems disproportionate to me. I so I'm kind of a little uh, afraid, and and then I ran into this, which I put on my computer. I'll read it to you. Be on the alert to recognize your prime at whatever time of your life it may occur. So it's like, um, I think that he went through several primes in his career.
Yeah,
And
for sure. And I totally relate to what you're saying.
yeah,
I'm 53, and
mm-hmm,
this is my soul work. I have the job that pays the bills,
mm-hmm,
but this is the thing that, yeah, and I started it, 3 years ago, truly. And so at 50 years old, diving
mm-hmm,
into this soul work, and I love that
right.
quote. That's brilliant. Also, what popped into my head was a friend of mine years ago drew. He's an amazing artist, and pencil drew me a door. And so when we're done recording, I'm going to run and get it and show it to you because
Oh, nice.
I love it so much. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
he'll love it.
right. I'm
Yeah,
constantly talking to clients about let's open that door. Let's walk through that door. Let's overcome that fear.
right. And I just think that's just such a cool thing to have in a space where people are starting to even think about doing some healing work,
Hmm.
possibilities of opening new doors.
Right.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
for sure. Awesome. All right. So, yeah, tell us now, what about your own personal story? Do you want to share any of that at all?
Well, I believe it was Adler who kind of, you know, laid the seed for this thinking in me where, um, we're moved to resolve or to heal that which was missing in our own lives, when we were young. And my family of origin significantly struggled. Both of my parents were orphaned at a very early age during the polio epidemic in the Caribbean. And so they grew up in foster and less than nurturing care.
Oh, yeah,
Consequently, they had very little idea of how to conduct relationships or um, love, affection, nurturing, any of those things. So I'm the product of that, and I saw it. Um, with I believe that we're all blessed with a certain amount of brilliance to get us through things, but not necessarily the most healthy or functional. But we make it through,
right,
and we adapt, and So I came from a place where abuse was practiced, and substances were struggled with, and I made myself a promise at the age of 17 that I would never do such a thing. And at the age of 28, there I was, um, repeating the same things I had been programmed to do,
right,
with no blame for anyone. I mean, and so I caused significant damage in my own family at the time. I was a young father who had no business being a young father. And so by the time I learned how to be a dad, I was out of a job. And so that has moved me to really, I don't think I made a conscious effort, but I think, as you mentioned, it's my soul.
yeah,
It's what my soul calls for. And so I want to help families overcome their difficulty without blaming or shaming or um, having someone to pin something on. Um,
right,
so I struggled with significant addiction issues, short-lived but terrible career in substance use, to the point where September of 2002, I stood in front of a person and professional and stated that I wanted to die.
yeah,
So from that point this way, the journey has been interesting. Um, And I've been truly blessed with great mentorship, um, great opportunities, and some good health. Um, everything. I call it the three V's: uh, vision, volition, and vocation. All have lined up for me. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And thank you for sharing. 'Cause
Sure.
got me choked up for just a second. I was like, oh, don't cry. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Um,
So, talk to me a little more about this book, this men's curriculum, Exploring Trauma, Building Resilience, because
hmm
again, ACEs Connection,
hmm
I love that community, just
hmm
incredible resource um, for healing.
Yeah, so the co-author, the lead author, and this is Dr. Stephanie Covington, who's done amazing pioneering work for over 44 years now. And she started working with incarcerated women. And the idea was how to help those women, overcome traumatic effects. And her hypothesis at the time was, these traumatic experiences are the cause for these folks being in jail.
Yeah.
And we're not doing any treatment for that. So she developed a program called Beyond Trauma and for women and beyond anger and violence to reduce prison violence and help women reintegrate into the world. And then she co authored a curriculum called Helping Men Recover It with Rick Dower, who was my mentor, and Dan Griffin. And while I was working with adolescents, adapted 10 of the sessions to adolescent developmental stages. And so I started working with boys on the curriculum. And through Rick Dower, Stephanie Covington saw that and asked me if I would co author the Exploring Trauma curriculum for men. And my idea in developing that was, well, we could devise all kinds of ways to talk to men about trauma or to help men overcome trauma. But I think the biggest thing is how do we get them to the table? How do we get them to actually talk about it?
Yeah.
And so the challenge was immense. In 6 sessions, I had to take a group of strangers,
Yeah.
men,
Yeah.
bond them, storm them, form them, and get them to be able to speak about their trouble and ask for help. So it's not intended to heal, but to open the door for them to start exploring and asking for help. So we are currently in 4 prisons in California, the correctional system in Connecticut. I presented the curriculum well, before I tell you that, I could say that when we started at Corcoran Prison in California, and we trained 12 inmates to conduct the program as facilitators with the
Wow.
support of staff.
Yeah.
Um, the it was less than welcomed by the staff there at the beginning. They didn't know what we were trying to accomplish. Um, and after it was studied by UCLA, a couple of researchers, um, when they completed the research, the it showed significant impact in reduction in anxiety, reduction in conflict, um, self-esteem, all of these driving issues. And I could provide you with those studies, but the most important thing was that the staff became so enthused because it reduced their level of interventions and their paperwork.
Right.
And they, since then, we've expanded it to three more prisons.
That's awesome.
I was presenting this in California at a conference, and unbeknownst to me, there was a lady there from who is uh, Lady Edwina Grosvenor of Westminster was there because she runs a program for men in the UK called One Small Thing. And she operates the Clink restaurant, which is a famous five-star restaurant inside a prison
Oh
that
my God.
civilians go and attend and run by the prisoners. She asked me to come, and I've been to the UK twice to train clinicians on the curriculum. Um, Never in 1,000 years would I've imagined that in September of 2002
Right.
that would be happening in my life. So the curriculum is great. It Again, it's not meant to go very deeply. It exposes them to ACEs, the ACE questionnaire. It exposes them to the impact of trauma. And, we used Shapiro's big T, little t concept. And it's just a way of opening the door to get them to talk. And the greatest thrill for me is that after the end of the third session is when men start saying, I think I need to talk with someone.
Oh,
And when it was vetted at River Ridge Treatment Center in Lakeville, Minnesota, they saw a significant spike in self referrals for therapy from men
oh,
attending this group.
yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Oh,
And we're trying to do the same thing for boys now with the A Young Man's Guide to Self Mastery. That's going to be a 12 session program, and it's going to come out next year.
yeah. I think is that 2020? Is that or spring of
Hmm.
2020? Is that what
Yeah,
I read? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's in editing right now, and all the headaches that come with it.
Right. I know. I'm finishing up a book
It's
manuscript.
my baby. Don't change it. Don't touch a thing.
Right. So true.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Well, you had
yeah.
said before we started recording, you've written some notes. Is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you wanted to talk about?
No, I've pretty much touched on everything that I put down.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Wonderful. Well, let me
yeah.
peek at. We're doing pretty good on time. We're good. We're
Sure.
only a half hour in. So,
Yeah.
well, again, what I think you're doing is beautiful, and yeah, thank you for that. And so,
Mhm.
how do people get a hold of you?
Well, I have an email, rob at frre.net. I will have, I have R. Rodriguez at thefamhub.org. I can be, I don't know, I could provide you correspondence or,
Right.
um,
Is there a website for people to?
yeah, the website is www.frre.net. That's our professional. And then your nonprofit is thefamilyhub.org. And
Okay.
that one is being constructed even as we speak. So
Awesome.
that's not going to be out for a while. But I hope to post it on LinkedIn. I could be found on LinkedIn. I would probably be listed as Roberto Rodriguez on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Um, I think that's also a circular thing for me. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I grew up in the Dominican Republic. I was born in New York, and they sent me down there when I was almost 4 years old, and
Okay.
I stayed there till I was 12 almost. And so I'm very grateful for that because those are the parent figures in my life that showed me really wonderful nurturing parenting. My uncle was a storyteller, and he's passed now, and they're both passed. But and my aunt was a very formidable, strong woman who enunciated when she spanked me.
Oh,
uh, but she loved me dearly and
oh.
protected me and nurtured me and took good care of me and gave me great advice. She was fond of a lot of sayings, but the one that I still stick with today is don't just solve the problem, unwrap the gift that comes with it.
Oh, yes. I
Yeah,
talk
she was.
about that. I think I just said that on my last podcast interview. Find When you find the gift within the chaos is how I look at it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
A friend, my best friend from high school, her oldest son, who I've known, obviously since he was born, he just got married and married a beautiful girl from the Dominican Republic. I mean, she's lived here forever, but and so their wedding, oh my gosh, it was so cool because she and her sister and mother changed out of her wedding dress, and they put on these beautiful clothes that were all matching and did this dance with their from the culture. Oh my gosh, like we were all mesmerized. It was beautiful. They looked beautiful, and yeah, very cool.
yeah. Culture is a thing that I like to spend a lot of time talking about because it's so complex. We like to, we like to simplify things. Sometimes I think we like to overcomplicate things, but in this instance, I think we make culture too simple when I talk about cultural awareness, for instance. I talk about my wife Patty, who when she first met me, I was born in New York.
Yeah,
I served in the Marine Corps. Um, I would die for this country. This is my country,
right.
And she asked me, "What are you?" And I said, "I'm an American." And she says, "Yeah, but what are you?"
Right.
And that's how it is. So I start sometimes when I start talking about in doing the trainings. Recently, I was in Detroit presenting the curriculum, and I say, in terms of cultural awareness, let's really delve into that because the first thing that I like to do is when the men are creating their mutual agreements, the rules of the group. I love it when a man says, "No judgment. We're not going to have any judgment." And I say, "Oh, let's talk about that." Because what are the first five questions a man will ask another man when they meet him? Where are you from? What do you do? Do you like football?
Right.
Are you married? What kind of car do you drive? Those are the usual questions. And what are those questions meant to do? Help me judge you.
Yeah.
Help me make sense of you. We all judge, I say, and we should embrace that. It is a good way to get around in life, make judgments. What we should do, though, is work through our judgment
Yes.
and make sure that we don't settle on our initial judgment. And then I give an example of a client that I really struggled with and I asked for help about. And my team says, "Well, Rob, if you were your client, what homework would you give you?" I said, "Well, sit next to him, ask him questions about himself, get to know him as an individual." Okay, got it. And I spent the next three groups sitting next to him and asking him questions. And nice guy. My reaction was totally about me. And so um, let's just walk through our judgment, not just settle on what we have. And another thing that I throw out to them is, my name is Roberto Rodriguez. What am I? And, they're stuck. And they'll say all kinds of things. Well, you came from Minnesota, so you must be Mexican, or you know, oh, oh, you grew up in New York, you must be Dominican, or and what does that mean if I
Right.
am? What
Right.
does it mean, and what does it mean if I am an American growing up with the last name Rodriguez in the barrio of New York, and I like golf?
Right.
Right? And when I was, I really, I had different ideas, and that caused significant conflict for me as a child growing up straddling two worlds. And my brother had a totally different experience in my household. And so you can't say that we're both of the same culture. And the way that I like to say also is I usually will reach out and shake someone's hand and I go, We're just now forming a culture,
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
our culture is going to be." And so cultural awareness is one of those, I guess that's one of the myths that I would like to clarify. that, I it's so varied. We're, as varied as our fingerprints, right? We just have to walk through it and get to know and never settle on the truth, whatever that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. Very
You're
much.
welcome.
And I think about, I'm half Irish, half German, and all I think about is it's like everybody always says, "Ooh, temper."
Well, my wife is German Irish.
Okay,
Last name is Weber.
there you go.
So yes, but
Uh,
she grew up in Nebraska, and she's one of the nicest people I've ever met.
that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
I love it.
As a matter of fact, I was thinking about that the other day. What can I say about my wife in describing her? And I settled on, she's nice.
And that's a
She's
huge
nice. Yeah,
compliment.
yeah.
I mean, really.
She's truly a nice person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I pray for that for my kids. I have 3 kids, and at night, when I'm doing my prayers, and I always say, just help them to be nice people. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge
Yeah.
in this world. So, yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. All right. Well, again, I thank you for joining me and shining your light of hope and sharing your passion with us today. So,
Thank you for having me, and thank you for what you do. Um, and you know, may it spread worldwide.
no, thank you. Thank you so much. I just wrote that today. I said, my goal is to reach 1 million people with stories of hope. And you're one of them.
Yeah. Well, may it be 6 million.
That's right. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And until next time, remember, be gentle with yourself. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.